I just mentioned a name, but a woman who I saw the other night on television just ripped some poor idiot apart. Megyn Kelly is here, and she's doing... Come up. Come up here, Megyn. By the way, I'm having a great time up here. Are you having a good time? This guy... Is he the greatest interviewer? Candace Owens, I watched her and I saw her coming. I said, you know, I'm pretty good at star power. I say, that's a star. I just want to finish by saying your reputation's amazing. I will not let you down. You will be very, very impressed.
Donald Trump, let me say this. My audience, I'd say 90% supports you. Okay.
Right.
And you definitely have shown your knowledge of geopolitical systems.
I just want to finish by saying your reputation's amazing. I will not let you down. You will be very, very impressed, I hope. And I think we'll be speaking a lot, but you'll be looking at me in a year or 2 years. Let's give me a little bit of a time to run things. But a year into office, you'll be saying, wow, I remember that interview. He said he was going to do it, and he did a great job. You'll be very proud of our country.
Well, I'm impressed. I mean, you're saying you're fully committed. You know, there's no future if we don't take this country back. Donald Trump, I hope you can help uncripple America. Thank you so much, sir. That you will be attacked for coming on, and we know you know that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Imagine you're Donald Trump. You're from New York City. You become famous in New York City. You make your fortune in New York City. And all of a sudden, the leadership of New York City decides they're going to destroy you because they don't like your politics. And so they, yeah, boo. Imagine if that were you, though. And they try and take everything that you have. They try and put you in prison. They try and put your children in prison. If that happened to you, how often do you think you'd be going back to New York City? How about never? And yet he's here. It's like getting thrown out of a bar. And you think to yourself, well, you know, all my friends are in the bar. And you approach the door and there's the bouncer like, you're not allowed in here. But from behind the bouncer, you hear the cheers of your friend, come on in! And the bouncer hangs his head in shame. Ugh. He's embarrassed that he's working for the man trying to keep the most popular person out of the bar. And that's Donald Trump back in the city that produced him with no embarrassment at all, in a room full of his friends.
It is vile on every level. It begins with a promise to use the U.S. military, our military, to destroy civilian infrastructure in another country, which is to say to commit a war crime, a moral crime against the people of the country. Those people who are in direct contact with the president need to say, no, I'll resign. I'll do whatever I can do legally to stop this because this is insane. And if given the order, I'm not carrying it out.
But the president has had enough of Tucker. And yeah, I'm just going to admit it. I sent the president Tucker Carlson's clip so he can see that he says about him. I do. And I want that Tucker Carlson to know that I'm the one who knifed him from the front. I want him to know. I'm not talking about physical violence, physical knifing, but yeah, I'm the one that sent the president all your shit, Tucker, because he deserves to see the fact that you are lying about him and you are smearing him and you are saying the most vile things about our country and our president, and you are creating so much chaos. You're going to cause the Democrats to take the House and the Senate, and you are endangering our national security by whitewashing this barbaric death cult ideology known as Islam. So I just hope that he knows that, yes, Tucker, there are people out there who actually have the courage to take your drivel and take your bull to the president and to stand up against you. I don't know who Tucker Carlson thinks he is. He thinks he's so popular. Even President Trump today called him out and said he's like a third-rate podcaster. I don't know why Tucker Carlson thinks he's so special. He's not. He's not special. He is endangering the lives of Christians, of Catholics, of Jews, and all non-Muslims in the way that he continues to whitewash this death cult ideology and the way that he continues to incite violence against evangelicals and Jewish Americans and even the president himself.
Here we are. It's been said for several years at this point. I've even said it myself years ago that President Trump is indicative of King Cyrus, right? If you're not familiar with the Old Testament passages, King Cyrus was a Persian king who took over Babylon. And after taking over Babylon, although he did not fear God, he himself was not a follower of God, he still had some sense of a commendation and a sense of feeling obligated to serve the people of Israel under the Old Covenant. They had been in captivity at this point for 70 years in Babylon. Persian king Cyrus takes over, and then he says, you know what? I don't fear God. I don't believe in God, but I'm going to be good to God's people. I'm going to actually resource the people of God out of my own treasury, out of his own resources, to go back to Israel and to rebuild Jerusalem, to rebuild the city, the walls, the temple, and to re-inhabit the land so that sacrifices to their God can be made again in proper order. And I think that God will bless our kingdom even for supporting that. And so that analogy has been used on multiple occasions to describe President Trump, because most God-fearing Christians, right? There are a lot of people who, drank the Kool-Aid, but, as much as I have supported Trump in the past, I never went this far because I'm a Christian pastor. And so I never went to the point of saying, oh, well, you know what? I actually think that Trump is a good, moral Christian man. Nobody hardly went that far, except for a bunch of MAGA cultists who will just say whatever Trump wants to hear. But pretty much everybody knows that Trump, in his essence, is a 1990s liberal Democrat who posed with Hugh Hefner, who has had affairs, a serial adulterer, who has been through multiple marriages. He's not an ideologue. Trump doesn't really have convictions. The only thing that he's actually ideological about, that he actually believes and is held to, would be certain economic policies, right? The guy's good with with business, with economics, with money, so the tariffs or things like that. Other than that, he doesn't have a dog in the fight. He doesn't have a genuine, true, authentic conviction to serve the Lord or to do this or to do that. He's I think homosexuality is not marriage. And then it's gays for Trump, just a few years later. Or, I think there should be some kind of penalty for the woman who commits abortion. He said that. He said that on national television. Yes, not only should abortion be outlawed, should it be done away with and abolished, but in order for that to happen, in order for justice to be done, there needs to be some kind of civil penalty for the woman. Trump said that on live television. And a few years later, all of a sudden, he's backtracking his rhetoric on the dignity of the unborn. So there's not really any moral or cultural or political ideology or conviction that Trump is actually held to. He's willing to sway on this, sway on that. People who are never Trumpers, like Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, Lindsey Graham, all these individuals, all of a sudden are now MAGA, right? I've even seen that there's going to be some kind of event hosted by Grindr at the White House or White House adjacent. And this has been posted online. My response when I saw that was, I guess Trump's right. I guess Lindsey Graham, a homosexual, childless, old man who can be spotted at Disney World holding a little kid's toy all by himself, alone, wandering like he has dementia. Trump has said, Lindsey Graham, Mark Levin, these guys are MAGA. Well, now that Grindr is going to be hosting an event at the White House, I guess Lindsey Graham really is MAGA. I guess that really is true these days. But the point is this: Trump has completely betrayed at this point his true base. And although there was this sentiment of, okay, Trump is not a good, moral, ideological, convicted Christian man, maybe he's still a King Cyrus, right? He's a guy who doesn't honor the Lord himself, but like the king of Persia, he comes into power and he's used under the providence of God to do good for God's people. He himself is not among God's people, but he's good to God's people so that they can restore, they can be resourced to go and rebuild and worship the Lord with freedom, with liberty, with safety and security. And that was kind of that was the idea. That was the big analogy that many Christians, like I said, including myself years ago, used to describe Donald Trump. But the reality that I think we have to come to at this point is that he's not King Cyrus. He is much more likened to King Saul. King Saul was a prominent and pivotal figure in the history of Old Covenant Israel. Previous to the kings, the dynasty in Israel, there was a time of the judges. There were prophets in the land, but very often they were killed and had no honor. They would speak for God, but they didn't have any civil power. They didn't have civil office. They were prophets that were crying out in the wilderness, guys like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, and they spoke for God, but ultimately, under the time of the judges, there was this system in which every man, the book of Judges says this numerous times, every man in Israel did what was right in his own eyes. It was a time of chaos. It was a time where there wasn't really any true biblical order. There wasn't any civil justice. There wasn't any real order. And we've had that time for decades here in the United States. And Trump came in like the first king in Israel. After the time of the judges, the first king appointed by God was Donald Trump. And Trump comes into Israel, and he comes, King Saul comes into Israel, like Trump came into America, as the first king, and he establishes order, and the people love him. But over time, the prophet at that time, Samuel, who anointed Saul as king, eventually says, the Spirit of God has departed from you. You were once small in your own eyes. You once had some sense of humility. Now, I know that's difficult to take that part of the analogy and tie it to Trump, because I don't know if he's ever been small in his own eyes. I don't know if he's, I think that, there are some strengths that can be said about Trump, but humility is probably not one of them. It'd be hard for me to say that, in the microphone, on camera, without just bursting into laughter. So it's hard to describe Trump as someone who is ever humble, but the point still is that even Trump, even if he started off with some measure of pride, I think that pride, that arrogance has grown, and it's grown exponentially to where he's no longer even close to being small in his own eyes, but he's gotten too big for his britches. And Samuel is this prophet who comes to King Saul and says at that point, he says, the Spirit of God has departed from you. And so rather than you having your own heir who will inherit the kingdom, it's going to go to another man who God will choose, a man outside of your dynasty, outside of your lineage, someone unsuspected, someone that right now is a lowly shepherd in his father's field, tending his father's sheep, David. But this man will be a warrior, and he will be a man after God's own heart. And so I'm calling it now. I'm going to just say right now, I think it may not happen in 2028, although I pray and hope that it does. It may be a 2032 kind of scenario. But I think that God used Trump to disrupt the Bush dynasty, the neocons, this decades-long period in America's history where everyone did what was right in their own eyes. There's a system. It seems as though there's order, but it's all unjust. It's all being propped up. It's all fake and gay. It's all being propped up by centralized banks and, globalist order and all these kinds of things. It's not good for actual Americans. It's not good for the people of God. It's certainly not good for Christians. And Trump, like King Saul came into the time of the judges where everyone's doing right, what's right in their own eyes, and he establishes order. But then King Saul gets arrogant, and the kingdom departs from him, the Spirit of God departs from him, and David is anointed as king. And there's this great civil war, this struggle between the house of David and the house of Saul. And there are more and more people who are, they were maybe appointed with King Saul and had some degree of honor and esteem. Saul thought well of him, but they eventually started to see, no, the Spirit of God is moving from Saul to David, and they started changing their allegiance not because it was personal, not because they personally liked David more than they liked Saul, but because they loved the Lord. Wherever the Spirit of the Lord was, that's where they wanted to be. And here's the deal. I don't agree with everything that Alex Jones has said. Alex Jones has said, some things that I think are wrong. And I think on some things he's been a little bit late to the game. And on other things, he was incredibly early. I mean, the guy called 9/11, right? I mean, that's insane. Like a year in advance, called it. Trump says he called it, but Alex Jones actually did. Here's the thing. I think Alex Jones has done a lot of good. Obviously, people make mistakes. He's made mistakes. But Alex Jones has done a lot of good, and he was one of the first guys, a forebearer for Donald Trump in his corner, pushing him onto the main stage. And I think of Alex Jones in some sense similar, and you could throw Tucker in here and a few others, but especially Jones. I want to give him credit for a moment. I think of him like the wilderness kind of prophet that doesn't have a formal civil position, but he has a voice and he's speaking the word of the Lord and calling things that are not as though they are. And I think of what Samuel did as the prophet in Israel at the time, anointing Saul. But then later on, actually removing himself from Saul as he sees the Spirit of God begin to depart. And then all of a sudden, God leads Samuel, the prophet, to go and anoint David. And I see that kind of, it's not really a King Cyrus moment anymore. I think that rhetoric held up for a number of years, that Trump is like King Cyrus. He's not a follower of God, but he's resourcing the people of God so they can go and rebuild Israel. They can restore the land and the temple and true free worship to the triune God. There was a time where that rhetoric held up. The King Cyrus analogy seemed to be a good descriptor of Donald Trump. These days, King Saul is a much more accurate descriptor of Trump. And if Trump is Saul, the question remains, who is David? Who is going to be the person who ultimately replaces Saul, who is actually a man after God's own heart, who will do what is right, who will stay small in his own eyes, who won't get too big for his britches, who won't become arrogant, who won't turn and betray his own men, the same men who, when David was not yet formally in power, but the anointing was already there are a group of men, David's mighty men, who are hanging out with him in the caves. And at the time, it wasn't people of prominence. Early on, when David is first anointed, but he hasn't come into the throne, it's everyone who is disparaged, everyone who is in debt. The Bible says this. Look at 1st and 2nd Samuel. It's all the disenfranchised young men in Israel who've been disenfranchised by Saul, who had high hopes for Saul, but Saul, his heart began to change and began to betray the people of Israel. And it's these men who have courage, they have grit, they have resolve, and yet they are down on their luck. They're disparaged, they're indebted, all these things. And they're the ones who, when David is he's not in power yet, but it's clear that he's going to be, the Spirit of God is upon him. They're the ones who rallied to David, the future king, who will be a king after God's own heart. They rally to David. They go into the caves of Adullam, and they're hiding out on the run from Saul, because Saul has actually gone mad by this point. He's gone crazy, right? The Bible even says that the Lord there was an evil spirit sent by the Lord in his sovereignty to afflict Saul. Because Saul had departed from the Lord, the Lord departed from Saul and even began to send an evil spirit to afflict and torment Saul, to drive him more and more away from his senses, more and more into his madness, to where he even tried to spear David. He tried to throw a spear and pin David to the wall when David was playing the harp in Saul's palace. David was serving Saul, trying to help Saul, and yet Saul turns against him. But all the disenfranchised young men in Israel, who have no kinetic power or authority or strength at that moment, but vast potential. It's untapped, but it's there. David can see it. David can see these are the men who will become mighty men one day, and those men can see in David, he has the anointing. He has the Spirit of God, and they begin to link arms with one another. A civil war as David begins to get more and more prominence in Israel, and the prominence of Saul begins to fade more and more. Eventually, there's a split in Israel, a divide of I'm with Saul, I'm with David. And Saul gets more and more jealous and more angry, because there are moments where people begin to sing songs. Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. And Saul is enraged, right? Trump has done some good, but question mark, blank, who is it? He has done even more good, and the anger and jealousy and bitterness and mad-driven loss of senses of Saul begin to compound more and more as David is gaining more and more of God's favor, and more disenchanted, disenfranchised men begin to rally to David's side. I think that this is what's going on. And Samuel himself, the prophet who anointed Saul and was with him, a great defender of Saul and God's appointment of him for a time. Eventually, as God, his spirit, begins to leave Saul, then Samuel turns from Saul also and finds David and anoints him. And I think of Trump like Saul. I think of multiple characters. You could say a Tucker, but especially an Alex Jones like Samuel. And the question is, who is David? Who is going to be the young man? And here's the deal. We're done with geriatric politics. We've got to be. We've got to be done with a gynocracy of, hey, we've got something conservative to say, so quick, somebody find a busty blonde woman in a pantsuit to stand up and say it for us because all the men are cowering and their knees are buckling. No. It's got to be a man, and it needs to be a man who preferably doesn't have to have a walker, who preferably doesn't have dementia, who preferably, has more than just, 4 or 5 years of life left. A man who's under the age of 115, that would be nice. So a young man like David, a Spirit of God departing from Saul, the prophet of God, Samuel, who once loved Saul, now having to leave Saul, and there's a sadness and a grief involved. Samuel doesn't want to leave Saul, but he has to stay true. His true loyalty is not to Saul, but to the Lord. And then looking, where's the shepherd boy? Where is the shepherd boy who, by the Spirit of God, despite his own natural abilities, has had the strength and the power to tear apart the lion, to conquer the bear, and one day will kill the giant to free Israel from its captivity by the Philistines? Who is this boy? Who is it that the young men are running to hide out in the caves for now until God gives them grace and ascendancy and power? That's what's going on. It's not Trump who is King Cyrus. It is Donald Trump who is turned into King Saul. And we should be looking for who is David. Who can we throw our lot in with? Trump, like Saul, changed the game. Right? The time of the judges, there's no king in Israel. Every man does what's right in his own eyes. But then God says, we're going to have a kingship. And even though there's a sense in which asking for a king, Israel even asking for a king, was ultimately, in some sense, it was a regression because God had been their king. And they wanted a king to be like all the other nations. But here's the deal. God could have said no. He could have said no. He said yes because he knew that even though their motives were wrong in Israel to ask for a king, that ultimately it was his will to establish, to move from the time of judges to a new time, a new era in Israel, the time of the kings. And he appointed as his first king, Saul. Saul ultimately became a traitor. And then the second king, now the kingship as a system is established. Someone who can go in like a wrecking ball, break down the previous systems of Israel, and establish order and strong leadership. That new system under Saul is established, but Saul, even though he's ushering in, inaugurating the right system, he's the wrong man. But the second guy after Saul who replaces him, a guy that no one suspected, a guy who's not a part of Saul's fan club. He was early on, but then later on, Saul has jealousy and bitterness towards him, is lashing out against him, throwing a spear to try to pin him to the wall. That guy becomes the next king in Israel, and he's a man after God's own heart. That's what I'm praying for. I love my country. I love America. I want to see a David-like figure, a guy who is zealous for the Lord, a guy who has a warrior's heart, a guy who also knows how to be tender and a shepherd of sheep, a guy who is small in his own eyes and by the grace of God remains humble to his dying day, who can be a true king of Israel, who can be a true leader, a great man in America, who can take the good of King Saul and the new precedent that it started in Israel, but then be not just in the right new system, but the right man who takes that, all the good and expands it without the evil, without the Achilles heel, without the pride, without the jealousy, without the betrayal. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're going to be breaking down in today's episode. Tune in now. One of the best sponsors on our show is Paleovalley. They have some of the healthiest food and products and supplements you can possibly imagine. And I've been testing and trying their products, not just me, but my wife and my children, our family. Their bone broth protein is phenomenal. Their beef sticks, multiple flavors, teriyaki, summer garlic sausage, are incredible. My kids, I have 5 of them, not 5 beef sticks. I have 5 kids, which means we need like 100 beef sticks, but my children love them. They have supplements, good supplements, not trash, good supplements for both men and women. So you want to help keep NXR Studios in the game? You need to help us by patroning our sponsor. It's Paleovalley, an incredible source for healthy food, but you can't just check out their website. Don't just type it into Google. If you use our link, which is in the description for this show, the show notes below, click on that link because it'll take you to a special Paleovalley website, a curated page with all the products that me and the NXR team and our families have personally tried and that are our favorite products that we vouch for. And there's a 15% discount that's already baked in to that webpage. But you got to use our link in the show notes below.
Radical Christian nationalist pastor, Joel Webbon.
Joel Webbon? I'm going to talk about Joel Webbon today.
Joel Webbon has been excellent.
We're back. We have a heck of an episode for you guys today. We're going to be bringing receipts, but first, we're going to start with a little bit of humor because I came in hot with that cold open. Wes, you just, during that commercial, you shared a joke with us, and I wrote it down in my diary. Wesley had a very funny joke today.
But I actually had thought of the joke before Wes said it, so it's actually mine.
And the cool thing is he thought about it because I first thought about it. So this is mine. If it lands, it's mine, and if not...
Antonio's joke through you, coming out through me.
Exactly. But we'll be watching the chat, and if people don't like the joke, then it really was Wesley's.
Well, here's the deal. It's great news. Guys, we got our wall. We got it. Trump promised it in 2016. He's like, we are going to build a wall. Beautiful. Now, the bad news is it is not a border wall in the south of Texas. It is a wall of text, enough that you can't even see through your neighborhood. Look at this wall of text. I mean, my goodness.
Instead
is this a James White tweet or a Donald Trump's post?
I mean, instead of $4.3 billion, it was just 4.3 billion words.
4.3 billion characters. This, I mean, no paragraph breaks. There's probably periods in there somewhere I don't even know. My goodness.
Just a rant.
And this is what we're going off of. We don't have time. I mean, we don't have 3 hours to sit here to read this whole thing. But Trump basically attacking Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, Candace Owens. Those are the 4 named in that. He calls them low IQ. He calls Candace Owens ugly, which is a pretty low hit. Yeah. And so that's what we're referencing.
Jones.
Bankrupt Alex Jones, all of that. So that's what we're referencing. We don't have time to read it. We got the wall.
Everyone's seen it.
It's not a border wall. It is a wall of text from the president himself.
It's a true social wall.
Yeah. So I think everyone's talking about this on X, obviously, over the last couple days, or at least since Trump has posted this. And it's just putting a little bit more clarity around the division, I think, that's happened in MAGA between what Mark Levin would dub the new media, the woke Reich. You saw in the clip in the before the cold open of Laura Loomer, and this idea that the Candaces, the Alexes, the Tuckers, these people are fundamentally disloyal to Trump. These are people who never were MAGA. Actually, Mark Levin all along was MAGA. Well, I want to jump back to Trump 1.0. I'm going to read a couple articles here, and you'll see actually very poignantly that was never the case. This is actually, you see in the thumbnail, why Trump changed. We never did. Well, this is going to become really clear. So I'm going to jump back all the way to the 2016 election. This is before November of 2016 when Trump was elected. This is an article from Politico that was published on April 8th. And it says that the hashtag Never Trump movement just got another backer. Conservative radio host Mark Levin threatened on Friday that he will not support Donald Trump in the general election should he be the nominee. Levin, a strong supporter of Texas Senator Ted Cruz, said that Trump's allies had made the billionaire Republican frontrunner toxic. Quote, as a result of what Trump supporters have attempted here, particularly Roger Stone, who was obviously the biggest Trump backer early on in the primary, I am not voting for Donald Trump, period, Levin said. I'll jump down a little bit. He says, quote, so I want to congratulate Roger Stone. And if anybody has a problem with that, Donald Trump, you can talk to Roger Stone. These bully, dirty tricks, Nixonian tactics, they're only going to backfire. So count me as never Trump. He says later, if they piss me off one more time, I'm going to urge millions and millions of you, should he get the nomination, not to vote for him either. Levin said. Now, before we even talk about that, I'm going to jump over January 28th, 2016. Let's read an article from Politico, published by your own Tucker Carlson. This is 3 months before Levin said he's never Trump. And he says, conservative voters are being scolded. Now, he's talking about conservative voters who were supporting Donald Trump at the time. Conservative voters are being scolded for supporting a candidate they consider conservative because it would be bad for conservatism. And by the way, the people doing the scolding, they're the ones who've been advocating for open borders, nation building in countries whose populations hate us, and trade deals that eliminated jobs while enriching their donors, all while implicitly mocking the base for its worries about abortion, gay marriage, and the pace of demographic change. Now they're telling their voters to shut up and obey, and if they don't, they're liberal. Okay, so he's talking about the GOP establishment in 2016 for all those people who were supporting Trump, saying he's our guy on abortion, he's our guy on gay marriage, he's our guy in terms of no more foreign wars, he's our guy on white replacement. They're being scolded by the GOP establishment. What are they calling them? Liberal. They're not conservative, they're woke. Right, so you have Tucker Carlson back in 2016 rightly identifying Donald Trump as the guy for this segment of the party, this overlooked, scolded, chastised element of the party, and Tucker Carlson's recognizing Trump speaking to that. Again, the title of the article was, Donald Trump is shocking, yes. Yes, he's vulgar, but he's right. So who changed here? Like, if you read these two things, it's Levin, the neocon, by the way, Levin, constitutional conservative, neocon, very hawkish, always been a supporter of Israel. Trump, meanwhile, back in 2016, if you remember, was getting a ton of flack for having spoken out against the Iraq war. No more foreign wars. But here we are, fast forward 10 years. Who's supporting the foreign war? Who's supporting Israel? Who's hawkish in the neocon foreign policy?
Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, Lindsey Graham.
Well,
And
Lindsey
somehow
Graham, just to keep kind of playing out the tape here, Lindsey Graham was a prominent never-Trumper in 2016, calling Donald Trump unfit for office, a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot. Literally, to the T, every single one of these people hated him in 2016. They were against him. Now they're singing his praises.
Now they're MAGA. No, but now they're the core. And like Tucker is like, all of a sudden, we can't remember when he was saying the exact same things, having the same exact positions 10 years ago that he did today. And somehow that's not MAGA anymore. So it's like, who changed?
Right.
Yeah. What sticks out to me is Trump calling them one of his specific attacks against them, among many, was low IQ. These guys are low IQ. These guys are dumb. And think about it. We just played the clip. Tucker Carlson is in Madison Square Garden in November 2024 rallying for Trump. Back then, was he low IQ? So when he supported you all these years, all the way back in 2016, all the way as recently as 2024, same thing for Alex Jones, who has been in your court for a decade. Were they low IQ then? It seems to be your IQ, some type of IQ as intelligence, that's the standard. That doesn't change. But apparently to Trump, you're low IQ if you're against him in any given moment. And if you're for him at that moment, doesn't matter what you did in the past, if you're for him, you're high IQ. That is such an arbitrary, subjective way to speak of people. And just to even demonstrate, here's how people go about disagreements with maturity. Grown men, and especially statesmen, they are going to have different opinions. They're going to come across on different issues. There's going to be things where they're together for a time. Hey, we really agree when this is the big topic. But then it comes to a war, it comes to something else, and we disagree. You can do it with maturity. You can do it without saying, hey, I think this person who I used to like is stupid. I think they're dumb. I think they're malevolent. I think they're malicious. You don't actually have to do this. And a great example, for example, is Doug Wilson. We have strong disagreements with Doug Wilson. We'd even go so far as to say he's doing some damage in advocating that America, well, hey, it's this Protestant Jewish project. There's things we strongly disagree with him on. And you will not find us publicly or privately calling him dumb, calling him names. slandering him like that. Now, you will actually find his son saying of Joel, it's a sin to be this dumb. So we've got it from one side coming our direction, but we have severe disagreements with different men. And yet we refuse to cast them out of the kingdom, to say they're unsaved, to speak of them as dumb, to insult their family, to call them ugly. That's how grown men disagree. So grown men can disagree. And even Trump could say, hey, I recognize there was a time when Tucker Carlson was in my court. I recognize when Alex Jones was in my court. And I appreciate what they did for me then. However, I disagree with them on the war, and I think they should take a step back. I'm the president. That's not what we're talking about here.
Right.
You're not with me now on this latest thing. After 99 different endeavors, you're an idiot. How could I have ever trusted
low
you?
IQ, loser, in all caps.
Bankrupt.
Like bankrupt, mocking the fact that Alex Jones, I mean, he's been financially destroyed, absolutely destroyed.
The settlement is in the billions. One of the largest settlements ever for not even anything kinetic that he did, just for a story
He'll
that was
never be able
misguided.
to own anything ever again. He may be able to stay on the air, but he'll have to be a part of a new company as an employee. He won't be able to be an owner of one of them. As it affects like his children and their inheritance, all those kinds of things, massive sacrifice has been made. And you can say, well, Alex did it to himself. I've seen a lot of guys say he did it to himself with, the remarks he made about the Sandy Hook. And yeah, he was wrong about that. He apologized for that. He's walked that back. But here's the deal. A lot of times people just look at what's on the surface and they won't give credence to the very substantive reality underneath the surface. People came after Alex Jones on the surface because of what he said about Sandy Hook. But if you think that he would have the same ire targeted against him had he not worked so hard to get Trump into office, had he not been a mouthpiece of Trump, an advocate of Trump, a fighter for Trump, if it hadn't been for Alex's close association and partnership with Donald Trump, I don't think that Alex would have gotten the same degree of hostility for the Sandy Hook situation. You have to recognize that part of the lawfare and the people behind it who were fueling it and funding it and supporting it and all those kinds of things are people who hate Donald Trump. I get hate mail all the time. It's funny. Nobody actually, the people who hate me don't actually watch our show. They just hate me because they've seen one tweet taken out of context, from 6 months ago or whatever it is. And I'll get letters all the time. And every single one of them, it's not about me. I'm just a proxy in their minds for the people with Joel Webben derangement syndrome. I'm just a proxy for Trump. And here we are for like the last, several months, we've been some of the harshest critics of Trump. We appreciate what God did through him. We're praying for him. We're hoping that there's a change of heart. But we're at the same time, we're calling balls and strikes and saying, look, this is not a just war. We should not have bombed Iran. We should not have done this. We should not have done that. And so we're willing to criticize him. We've been some of the strongest critics out there for the last several months, and I still get hate mail. And with the hate mail, it's not just, Joel Webben, you said this, and this is why I hate you. It's you said this, and then quickly, it'd be like one sentence, but it's a whole wall of text. It's a whole letter, and it's like one sentence of something that I said in a clip or some tweet that I sent, several months back, and then the rest of the letter is, and you probably support that pedophile Trump, and you love Trump, and I can't even repeat some of the things he'll say, but like lots of curse words and crude, perverse language of, you do this with Trump, and I'm sitting here, reading it, like just getting a chuckle out of it, thinking, dude, I've been calling Trump to the mat for several months now, on multiple occasions publicly. It's funny because it's like this leftist, hates me, but their ire against me, my point is, so much of it is fueled by what they perceive as my support of Trump. And it's the same with Alex Jones. Alex Jones, he messed up on Sandy Hook. He's been apologizing profusely for it and doing everything he can to wrong that, or to right that wrong, ever since, for multiple years now. And yet, none of the lawfare has let up at all. And when you look beneath the surface of the different, organizations behind it that are funding this whole campaign against Alex Jones, it is in large part because of Alex Jones and his support over the past decade for Donald Trump. You can literally say, without hyperbole or exaggeration, that Alex Jones has been in a 3-year process of having his entire life and everything he's built ripped apart in large part because of his love and support for Donald Trump. And then Donald Trump puts out a tweet like this, not just saying, hey, it'd be one thing if Trump said, listen, you guys have supported me, I'm grateful for you, but you've got to stand back and stand by and trust me, let me cook. I'm the president of the United States. I'm privy to information that you don't have. Yep. I'm seeing some of the things, and you've got to know that I love this country, and give me a moment. Let me cook. Give me a moment. That would be one thing. But he didn't just do that. Instead, what he did was he came out insult after insult, cruel, you're losers, you're low IQ. He takes Alex Jones' life being financially destroyed and ripped apart and adds it in the tweet, bankrupt Alex Jones, a guy who literally...
On his behalf, pretty much?
That's my whole point. Yeah. Bankrupt, why? Because he missed it with Sandy Hook? Yes. On the surface, that's true. But underneath it, he would not be in a lawsuit for billions of dollars being sued. He'd be sued.
Yep.
He'd have some penalties, but it'd be a setback, but he would have survived and kept going. But this is one of the biggest lawsuits of like a clown, comical amount of money. And that is the depth, the intensity of this lawsuit is in large part because of his support of Trump. And so Trump is going to say, you are taking bullets, right? Trump was supposed to be the guy who took bullets for us. And now he's turning and saying, you've been taking for 3 years bullets from me, and I'm going to mock you in your bankruptcy. That it's
just as insane. A point of fact, it's like the comments were made in December, right after the Sandy Hook massacre, December of 2012, and then further in 2023, he called it a government operation. This is basically the focus of a lawsuit that was opened in Austin, Texas, in 2018. By the way, so in Trump 1.0, his first administration. So comments in 2013, Trump appears during the election, the primary election on Alex Jones' show. What would that be? 2016? The clip that we put?
2015, yeah.
2015, Trump appeared. No thoughts then. What about in April 2018 when the lawsuit was filed? Did Trump come out and condemn Alex Jones then? Did he have this feeling of, oh, this is so terrible and heinous and you need to be bankrupted for this? No, he didn't have it. It's clearly political. And the most frustrating thing is like, this isn't derangement syndrome. This isn't like, going back to your point, this isn't us looking at Trump and saying, you are failing on every front. You're failing in so many ways. You've turned your back, and no matter what you do from here on out, we hate you. That's not what this is. This is us actually as formally being Trump's base on all of these different issues, domestic predominantly, demographic change, open borders, America First policy, no foreign wars. We're literally looking at you and saying, you're not being consistent on these things. We want you to focus on the things you ran on. And that's where all of this backlash of, oh, well, you're disloyal, that's what it's coming from.
That's
not
right.
Derangement syndrome.
And this is not just subjective. It's not just, oh, this is our opinion. This is Mark Rubio. This is J.D. Vance. There's been several people in close proximity from the White House who have come out and said, Israel dragged us into this war. We're talking about the Wall Street Journal. We're talking about the New York Times. We're talking like this is just reality. Everybody knows that this is reality, that we overstepped our jurisdiction. We went in too hot into a situation that we should not have been involved in, at least at that caliber. We were told all the way back in July of 2025 that, they're 2 weeks away from nuclear, and then we sent our bunker busters, our bombs and all this kind of stuff. And we were told that was winning. So much winning, you won't be able to, you'll say, please, Mr. President, I can't handle any more winning. And, and then we're going to win some more. And we were told that we won, that we completely decoupled and destroyed Iran's ability to attain any kind of nuclear power. And then all of a sudden, less than a year later, we're doing it again. And then you have high up White House, appointees in Trump's administration, like Mark Rubio, saying on live air, the Freudian slip, yeah, Israel pulled us into this. We bombed Iran the second time now in 2026 because we knew that if we didn't, then Israel would, and they wouldn't get the job done. And so then there'd be return fire on U.S. bases, our own military, our own staffers. They would be caught up as collateral and casualties. And so they're saying it out loud. And then we get the 2-week, ceasefire. And immediately Israel starts bombing the living hell out of Lebanon, which has 40% Christians, by the way, in their population. And Iran is saying, well, wait a second, we agreed to a ceasefire for 2 weeks, but you're bombing Lebanon. And then the White House comes out. Lebanon was never part of the deal. And then Iran comes out and shows that Lebanon actually was mentioned. It actually was mentioned. And then you have Trump, the latest news, going and talking to Netanyahu, like, could you please stop destroying any chance of peace we possibly have? To which, the reports are that Netanyahu responded by saying, yeah, we'll bomb them low key. We'll low key kill Christians in Lebanon from now on, wink, wink. And so here's the deal. The deal is Tucker Carlson doesn't hate Donald Trump. Alex Jones doesn't hate Donald Trump. Candace Owens doesn't hate Donald Trump. They hate this war. And by the White House's own admission, it was a mistake. Trump got bad counsel. That's the fact. That is the fact. Trump got bad counsel from worm tongue in his ear, all the MAGA, make Israel great again counselors that wormed their way into MAGA, into Trump's good graces. He listened to them instead of his original loyal supporters, made a mistake in geopolitics with the war in Iran, and now it's like, hey, we're winning again. We got the ceasefire. The Strait of Hormuz is going to be it's open again. Stonks go up, right? And you see the SPY and the NASDAQ and the Dow going through the roof yesterday. Meanwhile, you can read the reports. How many ships have gone through? 11. How many of them are oil tankers? None. Cargo ships. Okay, well, what's it gonna be? Maybe, it just takes a while to get it started. It's the first day. 15 ships a day. All right, 15 ships. We're winning. What was it previously before Trump bombed Iran? 130. Oh, and you might have to pay $2 million tolls for every ship. We won. Wait, you're saying we got the same deal that we already had before we did anything, except now we lost tax dollars, American lives with our service members, and we have to pay money and take less ships through and that's winning? With winning like this, who needs losing? You know what I mean? And so here's the point. Trump could simply say, you know what? I got bad counsel. You know what he should be doing? He should have come out and fired everyone who gave him counsel to bomb Iran. And say, you know what? I missed this one. And here's the big deal. All the guys that Trump is blasting, who were his greatest advocates for a decade, right? When Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro and all these guys were saying that Trump is a dictator and Trump is terrible, neo-fascist, Nazi, all that. Like the guys who were actually in Trump's corner from the very, very beginning, they don't hate Trump. They hate the war. They criticize it harshly, and they were right. And the White House itself has come out and said, yeah, we got bad counsel. We got bad intel from Israel. We got drugged into the war. We overstepped. The deal that we have now, maybe peace is coming, but it'll be peace with a price tag attached to it from now on, whereas before we didn't have to pay it. It's not good for America. We messed up. Trump could simply have come out and said, look, you're not criticizing me. You're not saying I'm a loser. You're not saying I'm low IQ. You're not saying I'm bankrupt. You're not saying I'm an idiot. You're saying this decision, all this good, but this decision was bad. Please, Mr. President, listen to reason and stop. And Trump could have come out and said, I see that. I see that you're not critiquing me as a person. You're critiquing this decision. And I realize I got bad counsel and we're pivoting. And these guys who gave me the bad counsel, you guys are fired. He could have done that, right? Instead, he's like, you guys are idiots, doubles down. And you know what? Classic Trump.
Yeah,
I mean, we've got to be honest.
They tried to call me. I never answered their calls. It's just so submissive.
All right, real quick, knickknacks, guys. You gotta check these out. All right, it's like knickknack, tic tac, knickknack, polywhack, give a dog a bone. These are incredible products, and I know the guys behind it, and they are super, super based. They are not GOP, neocon. They are right-wing, Christ is King, America first guys. You can see, I mean, it's hard because, the camera, we'd have to zoom way in, but basically the logo right here on knickknacks is a foot crushing the head of a serpent. Right? That's not a coincidence. That is not just America first. That's Christ first. That's Christ is King. That's the imagery of Jesus, the promised seed of the woman, her offspring, who would one day come, and though the serpent would strike his heel, he would crush its head. So you've got literally a gospel proclamation, Christus Victor, right here on the front of the product. And like Tic Tacs, like I said for a moment in the beginning, they're different because they're not pouches. I like pouches. I like Alp. I think Alp's a good product. There's a lot of good nicotine pouches out there. But sometimes it's nice to not have a soggy pouch just sitting in your mouth, forever until you eventually have to spit it out. These dissolve. They take about 15, 20 minutes, probably about 20 minutes. And you would put them in the same placement in your mouth as you would a nicotine pouch, and it will just slowly dissolve. There's no waste. There's nothing synthetic in your mouth. It's all natural. The ingredients are incredible. The sensation is incredible. The company, the guys behind it are absolutely incredible. And by supporting Knick Knack, you are supporting us. If you buy their product, they will continue to sponsor this show. If they sponsor this show, we can keep making the show. It is that simple. So if you don't have money to directly fund and help us, well, then if you're already using nicotine, at least give Knick Knack a try. Right? So we're not asking you to spend more money. We're asking you to spend the same money that you would normally spend on your nicotine product, but try a different company that's America-based, that's Christian, Christ-centered, and that supports our show so that we can stay in the fight. You can use my promo code. I believe it's
Joel20 exclamation.
Joel20. Because it's 20% off, right? A lot of guys, they're shilling different products. Everybody's got to do it. I get it. But a lot of times it's 10% off. This is double that. This is 20% off. So if you're already buying nicotine, if you don't have a nicotine habit, then I'm not telling you need to start one. But if you're somebody who uses nicotine, uses it responsibly, try this product. Try Knick Knack and use Joel20 exclamation point. It's all caps, JOEL 20 exclamation point. That's the promo code. You will literally buy something you're already buying, except you'll save money with 20% off, and you'll fund our show, and you'll be funding an American first, Christ is King company. I don't see the downside. It means a lot to us. It means a lot to them. Give it a shot. All right.
Yep.
Great.
Well, Trump he's not that guy. We thought for a moment that he would be the great man. He would restore the fall that America's been in, the decline of the American regime. But he was the precursor. And unlike him, we can say Trump did a lot of good. He really did. We supported his election in 2024. There was a lot he did good, especially in his first term. But he's not that guy. And one of his besetting sins is his ego, is his pride. Why do Mark Levin, why do Lindsey Graham, why do Randy Fine, why do Laura Loomer, why do they have such access to him? Because they flatter him. I think of the story we've actually used a lot as we talk about it, is Theoden in Lord of the Rings. He's a king and he's great, but he comes under bad counsel through Wormtongue, and his mind is poisoned, and he's poisoned by his advisors, by his side that turn him even against his own son, even against those that support him. And so Trump's been lied to. The advisors beside him have given him terrible advice, and so we look forward to who's going to come next, who's going to pick up the mantle, and we pray that that same character flaw, the pride, the ego, the willingness to bring the people in that say, how great are you, O King, that he has the wisdom and the character and the virtue to say, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to be flattered. I'm going to be humble if I make a mistake. That's the man who will actually restore our American empire.
Correct. The way that you could say it is this: Trump had the courage, but he didn't have the moral compass. He had the courage, but not the compass, not the conviction, right? Courage, but not conviction. At the end of the day, Trump's convictions are 1990s liberal Democrat from New York convictions. They are, they're the convictions of a guy that you would assume, you would expect, who would pose with Phil Hellmuth or
Hugh Hefner,
with Playboy, or the guy who would be on, his third marriage, or the guy those are the convictions.
He bragged about Jeffrey Epstein liking young girls. Now, in that category, young would have been 18 and older, but that was kind of funny. I got this friend, he really likes sleeping with young girls.
Right.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's gross. Yeah, that's not good. Not good. So the point is, and by the way, I'll say this. you can tell that you do not have the popular sentiment behind you with this war when your wife is thinking, you know what, we should change the subject. Let's talk about Epstein. Like when your wife is saying Epstein might be actually a better look for us than continuing to talk about Iran.
Yeah.
Right.
That was not a winner, but it's better than this.
That's how you know you're not winning. So the point is this: Trump. We got to give credit where credit is due. He had courage, and he's the first major politician in my lifetime that actually had grit, that had courage. And God used him, and he did a lot of good. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful for that. And here's the deal. This is what I'm trying to display here at the end. We can't criticize Trump for turning on a dime and saying, these guys who always loved me and I always claimed to love them, well, now it turns out that these guys have never done anything well. They're low IQ. They're always losers. Been stupid. Exactly. So let's not fight fire with fire. Let's not do the same thing. So I don't want to turn and say, now that Trump is doing a few things that I don't like, although they're big things, Trump has always been terrible, and he's never this, and he's no. We can actually chew gum and walk at the same time. We can say God used Donald J. Trump, and he used him in multiple ways. He's the best president so far of my lifetime. He had courage in spades, but he doesn't have the strong Christian conviction. And we're praying that God would raise up a man after his own heart who has both courage and conviction. There have been guys with conviction. Mike Pence. Like, I'll be honest, the dude wouldn't even host a meeting with a woman in isolation alone. I actually think that's good.
Yeah.
I like that. Mike Pence had conviction. You know what he didn't have? Courage. Trump has courage, but it doesn't really seem like he has conviction. Right. He's against abortion, and then abortion's not really that big of a deal. You know, I'm going to release the Epstein file. Epstein, you're still talking about that? You're still talking about that? You know, or mass deportations, and like, no, you're not going to get mass deportations.
Telling Republican congressmen to stop talking about it leading up to midterms.
Stop talking about it.
Hey, guys, stop mentioning it's not happening.
So there have been guys, good old boys in the GOP who are against abortion and gay marriage. They have conviction, but zero spine, zero courage. And then finally, on the backdrop, in that context, in the backdrop of a political landscape with zero men of courage, a guy with courage looks really good. And Trump really looked good, and he really did a lot of good, objectively. And I praise God for it. Mr. President, I'm grateful for the good that you have done. But you don't need just conviction without courage, or just courage without conviction. You've got to have both, conviction and a compass, courage and a compass, courage and conviction. And I don't know, I'm just going to be honest. If I had to bet right now, the David type figure, I don't think he comes in 2028. I think it's probably a little bit too soon. I think we're probably going to have to experience a little bit more pain before the people are ready, before America is ready to say, no, we've experienced enough of God's rod of discipline because of our own choices, our own rebellion. We're ready to repent now, and God gives us a better king as an act of mercy. So I don't know if he's coming in 2028. It may be later. 2032, for some reason, for a while now, has felt... That's just, I don't know. I felt strongly about 2032. But the point is, we need a guy. We had guys with conviction, but zero courage. We finally got a guy with courage, but not a lot of conviction. We need the guy who has both. And for him to come, we as a nation need to be prepared. We need to repent. And we're probably, sadly, because we are a stiff-necked and rebellious people, we have apostatized from the Lord Jesus Christ, we're probably going to have to experience a little bit more of God's judgment first before we actually turn the tide and actually deserve the kind of president, the kind of leader that we've been talking about on this show. Right now, I don't think we get that leader because I think we probably get the leader we deserve. And the truth is, we deserve another lousy leader because we have been a lousy people. We have not loved the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind. We have not humbled ourselves and called out to God and prayed unto him that he might heal our land. We have not done these things. We've had this thin Christian veneer. Christ is king, which is true. We say it all the time. We mean it. A lot of guys say it and they don't mean it. We're shifting back to right wing, but it's America first, heavy. Christ is king light. And I don't think that movement gets you a David, because David is not just has a heart for his people, but he's a man after God's own heart. If we don't have the people, then I don't know if we're going to get the man. And so my prayer is that God would continue to chastise us, although it hurts, that it would drive us as a nation, as a people to repentance, and that he would provide a leader for us in his due time who has both courage and conviction, that it would be a David-type guy and not a Saul-type guy. I pray that God would give courage to guys like Alex Jones, guys like Tucker Carlson. And that said, again, I just want to say here, I'm grateful for Tucker. I'm grateful for Alex. That doesn't mean we agree with everything. I think that Tucker has been on point with 9 out of 10 of the things that he's been saying when it comes to the war, when it comes to things about China even. People don't want to, oh, you're a traitor to America. No, he's a realist. He's a realist. The things he's saying, look at history and the way that things historically shake out. Tucker is on it. That said, one example where I'd like to see Tucker beef up his rhetoric and grow. I think that you can be hard on Israel because it's a massive problem. It is a mass Zionism, a Zionist-occupied American government is what we currently have, and it is a millstone around our neck. It's dragging us to the bottom of the sea, and Tucker has been nailing it. That said, in order to make that point, you don't have to be soft on Islam. You don't. So I'm saying these things at the end. The only reason I'm saying them is I like Tucker. I'm grateful for Tucker. I really like Alex. Grateful for Alex. The only reason I'm saying these things at the end is not to disparage Tucker. It's not to disparage Alex. But there's just right now in the larger social media landscape, in the news, in the public square, you've just got glazing. Just shameless, unbridled. It's the new MAGA, Mark Levin, Laura Loomer, glazing of Trump. And he can do no wrong. And then you've got glazing of Candace and Tucker, and they can do no. And we want to sit here and say, look, on this issue, with the war in Iran and how things are currently shaking out, I'm on Team Tucker. I'm not on Team Trump. And so I'm not just, I don't want to do the third way middleman. I'm above it all. No, I'm not above it all. We have a country currently hanging in the balance. My children are going to grow up in this country. I'm not going to sit here and be a pietist and be above it all. No, I'm picking a side. I'm picking a team. America first. That's my team. I pick America first over MAGA, right? No qualifiers. That's it. That said, with America first, I'm not going to do with America first what all the new MAGA candidates like Laura Loomer are doing with MAGA and Trump, glazing him no matter what, speaking in his ear, using flattery. Oh, you're so great. You've never done anything wrong. You could do no wrong. I'm not going to do that over here. So I have a team. I'm not sitting there doing the splits in the middle, above it all. America first. I'm with Tucker Carlson over Donald Trump. Period. I am. That said, Tucker, because that's the team I picked, that's the team that I'm going as a friend-enemy distinction. I'm not going to do it as I would when I critique the left. I critique them as enemies because they are. They are enemies of America, enemies of Christ, enemies of my wife and children and future posterity. I'm not going to level that kind of rhetoric that I would level against the left, against Tucker Carlson, because he's a friend. We're on the same team. That said, I'm also not going to be, as Laura Loomer is to Trump, I'm not going to be to an Alex Jones or a Tucker Carlson. I'm going to say, Tucker, you're nailing it. So glad to see this. Also, Islam is not our friend. They're not our friend. They worship a false god. And Islam, not just religiously, is it a false religion that damns people to hell, but also philosophically, in terms of not just religion, but civilization, it is incompatible with the West. Islam is it's not just false doctrine and wrong. It is holy, not H-O-L-Y, but W-H-O-L-L-Y. It is holy, entirely Eastern. Islam has no place in America. It cannot coexist in America. It can't. So, all that being said, there are things, balls and strikes, everywhere you look. But if you want to follow a group that we too have our faults, we have our flaws, We're not perfect. We're learning as God sanctifies us, as we grow in spiritual maturity. But if you want to follow a group that actually will admit when we're wrong, we've done that. By the grace of God, all glory goes to God, but I have publicly admitted on multiple occasions when I got it wrong. I've never heard Trump say that he got something wrong. Right. And to be fair, most public figures, like 99% of them, I've never heard them admit when they got something wrong. But if you want to follow a group that's willing to not just glaze one team over the other, but at the same time isn't laissez-faire, above it all, and we have no team, no, we have a team, America first, Christ is king, we're working with them, we have the friend-enemy distinction, but even on our team, we're willing to call balls and strikes, and when we get it wrong, we'll publicly admit it on air. Like Paul says, he's like, I must be out of my mind to speak like this, but humor a little fool's talk for a moment. I don't know any group, anybody, any Christian group that is doing a podcast in the public square, speaking to politics and culture that fits that bill. Willing to pick a team unapologetically, but also not glazing them relentlessly, shamelessly, insufferably, and also willing to admit when they themselves get things wrong. There's just not a lot of guys in the space currently doing that who are America first, America only. And yet at the same time, Christ is king, but not just as a sarcastic slur. Actually mean it. I'm not trying to disparage you, but I am not a single man who is kind of, privately light on morality, but uses Christ as king and America first and big in my rhetoric. I'm not. I'm almost 40 years old. I'm the husband of but one wife. I have 5 children. I'm a father. On the weekends, you'll find me playing in the backyard on a jungle gym with my kids. I'm a local pastor. I actually have real people, flesh and blood, brick and mortar, not just online. But I have a few hundred people in my life, in my local church. I'm doing marriage counseling. I'm seeking to love the people of God tangibly in front of me, not just social media. We're not the pagan right. We're not. But we are unapologetically right wing. Mm-hmm. We are not conservative liberals. We're not conservative liberals. We are right wing, return to nature, despise egalitarianism, race realist, J-pilled, patriarchal, no more boss babe women leading the way, America first, but also Christ is king, a set of morals, on the ground, local accountability in our local church, family men with wives and children, willing to pick a side and not be above it all, but criticize as a friend would our own side and publicly admit when we get it wrong. If there's a bunch of other channels out there, let me know in the comments. If there's not, subscribe to our channel, click the bell, and follow along. We need your support. We need your encouragement, and we need your help. God save America. But America needs to repent, and America needs to bless God. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time. We broadcast live Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. You can follow us on YouTube and Rumble and XR Studios, or you can follow me on Twitter. The handle is @JoelWebben. Thanks for tuning in. God bless.